All right, so today we are looking at public goods. The last time we met, we looked at what we call market failure. That when the economy is left in the hands of the private sector or the market system, it normally fails. So we said market failure occurs when the private sector is unable to efficiently allocate the economic resources. So we discussed some of the ways through which we get market failure. We said we have public goods, externalities, risk and uncertainty, information asymmetry, monopoly power, and all those things. So today we'll look at what public goods are, what public goods, and then how public goods are efficiently produced or provided. All right, so the key topics for this lecture, we'll look at the definition and then the characteristics of public goods, effective provision of public goods, and then the problems of preference regulation. Then we'll look at something called the Lindahllian solution to the problem of providing public goods. Okay, so basically, when we talk about a public good, we are talking about a good that just after the production of the good, the consumption of the good by one person does not diminish or reduce the quantity available for another person to consume. And also, you are unable to prevent others from consuming that commodity. Now, let's look at what a private good is. For a private good, we say a private good is rival in consumption. The reason is that when one person consumes it and you are adding another person, it means there's going to be a reduction in the quantity available for the next person to consume. But for public goods, they do not behave like that. If you take something like street light, if there's a street light and one person is under the street light, one person is consuming it. If another person should join the first person, it doesn't reduce the quantity of the street light that the first person was consuming. But if the good is a private good and one person is consuming it and you add another person, it reduces the quantity available. Assuming we have 10 balls of kinky. One person was trying to consume this 10 balls of kinky, and then another person joins and also start consuming some of these 10 balls of kinky. It means that the first person wouldn't have 10 balls of kinky to consume now because of the addition of the extra person. But the public goods are not like that. Okay, so we say that they are non-rival in consumption. The amount, or even we can say that the utility that one person gets from consuming it doesn't reduce by adding another person. Okay, so that's what we mean by non-rival in consumption. And also the good is non-excludable. You cannot prevent one person from consuming it. So far as the good has been provided, it has been provided for all. Okay, there's no way after the production of a street light, we can tell some people that they shouldn't enjoy the street light. Just a few people should do that. No, you cannot group the society into two and prevent some from consuming. So these are the two basic characteristics of a public good. One, when one person is consuming it, it doesn't diminish the quantity available for another person. And then as soon as the thing has been produced or provided, you cannot prevent others from consuming it. Now, though we have some examples of pure public goods, at times it's very difficult to actually consume a pure public good. It's possible it will be non-rival in consumption, but then you wouldn't be you'll be able to prevent other people. At times too, you wouldn't be able to prevent other people, but the thing will be rival in consumption. So most of the times we we don't get the pure ones. Okay, we call them quasi public goods, but we are dealing with pure public goods. For example, if you take something like a road, okay, if you take something like a road, it's not always that a road is a pure public good. If you want to know if a good is a pure public good, you just check and see if the good satisfies the characteristics. Please, can you mute yourself? Now, if you take a road, there are some roads where some people can be prevented. As for the consumption, is not rival. When one car uses the road, it doesn't reduce the quantity of the road available to another driver. But then you can prevent others from using the road. If you take the motorway, for example, there are toll booths. If you don't pay, you can't use it. So there, we cannot say that that road is a perfect public good or is a pure public good. It has characteristics of a pure public good, but it isn't pure. But let's take something like maybe national defense. Let's use this Russia and then Ukraine case. Assuming that UN should send soldiers to Ukraine to go and protect their borders. As soon as these people get to the border, one, the service, the protection they are going to provide there is non-rival in consumption. If you have 20 people there in Ukraine, and then these soldiers are protecting them, if you add another person, it doesn't reduce the protection that the initial 20 were having. So the consumption of that defense will be non-rival. And also, just because they are there for everyone. You cannot prevent some of the residents there from being protected by the UN soldiers. So if you take something like defense, there we have a pure public good, but then there are cases where the good wouldn't actually be pure. Like the example that we have here. This is for TV signals. Okay, the old one that we use, those old stuffs. For them, we called it the terrestrial TV signals. They were pure public goods, provided you had a television before these satellite stuffs and the pay-per-view stuffs came in. The signal that we were initially using was terrestrial. It was just for everyone. So as soon as you have a TV, you were able to have access to that. But the ones that we have now, like the cable, if you take something like the cable, fine. If you get your cable, then assuming we have 20 cables, if one person should buy it, it reduces the quantity available for the others. Okay, so there we say that the consumption is a bit rivalry, but the signals are there. So provided I have my cable, there's no way you are going to be able to prevent me from using it. So here you see that it is quasi, it is not satisfying both. If you take the satellites too, the thing is there. When you have yours and I have mine, when you consume yours, it doesn't reduce the quantity available for me. But here you have to go and buy it. Okay, if not, you will not be prevented to, you will not be allowed to have access to those satellite channels. And then for the pay-per-view, they are purely private. If you don't have more money to access them, there's no way. So at times it's quite difficult to come by pure public goods. Okay, they are normally quasi. They at times have some properties of that and then properties of pure private goods as well. And then there are some issues when it comes to this public goods stuff. Public goods are not absolute. It's not always that the thing will be a public good. At times, it depends. It can even depend on the level of technology of that society. Initially, like this TV signal example, we didn't have all this sorts of technology here in Ghana. So we're just using the terrestrial. We all have access, but now because of improvement in technology, some people have been able to develop new ways that we can access these channels, and as a result, they are now failing to be called pure public good. So at times, from time to time, the properties of these goods do change, and thereby they fail to be called purely public goods. So let's take the first characteristic. The good is not rival. What this means, as I said, when one person consumes, please can you mute yourself? When one person consumes it, it does not reduce the quantity available for the person who was initially consuming it. Okay. In other words, it doesn't cost us anything to add another person. If you take a private good, before you can produce an extra quantity, you have to incur an extra cost, what we call the marginal cost. But for a pure public good, provided the thing has been produced, okay, when you are adding another person, there's no cost at all. If you take this street light case as an example, after the thing is there, I mean, what cost do you incur if another person comes to enjoy it? So the marginal cost of adding another person tends to be zero, okay, and as a result, we say that the consumption is non-rival. Okay, it's not like a pure private good. For private goods, there's a marginal cost you have to incur when you try to produce an extra unit, and then if one person should consume it, it reduces the quantity that is available for others to also consume. Okay, so that is the first characteristic. And then if you take the second one, you are unable to prevent people from consuming the good. It's not because of the property right. If you take private goods, the person who buys the good, the person who owns it, has the right over that particular good. And as a result, he or she owns that good. But for public goods, there is no right like that. The thing is for common benefit. Okay, so no one has the power to take dominion over that good. So if you cannot have dominion over the good, then you cannot prevent people from consuming it. Okay, if you take a private good, you can be prevented from consuming the good, because one, as soon as we give you the good, you are now the economic owner of that good. So you buying the rights means you have to pay for something. But here for public goods, people don't normally pay anything for public goods. So they just enjoy it. Now, the reason why you cannot prevent people from enjoying it is that it is very difficult, very expensive for you to do that. If you don't take your time, the cost that you have to incur in preventing people from enjoying it will be more than even if you just leave those people to enjoy their good. Okay, so the consumption of the good by one person doesn't reduce the quantity available for others, and also because the good is for the society's benefit, no one has a property right over that particular good, and as a result, it becomes very difficult for you to prevent others from consuming it. And one thing you have to understand is that when you are adding more consumers, you don't incur any cost. There is no marginal cost at all. Okay, so if there's no marginal cost at all, then I mean, why are we trying to prevent people? And then you know that normally price of goods are charged based on their marginal cost. If you remember, Pareto efficiency requires that price must be equal to your marginal cost. So if your marginal cost is 0, then price must also be 0. So if price is 0, then you cannot actually prevent anyone from consuming the good. So if you have a good and the good possesses these two characteristics, then we call that good pure public good. Okay. So these are some of the differences between a pure public good and then a pure private good. For a public good, there's no cost in admitting another person to consume the good. Okay, when you are adding more consumers, you don't incur any cost at all because the thing has already been produced. When you consume it, it doesn't prevent others from also enjoying it. But for private goods, because of ownership, and if you want to produce an extra unit for an extra consumer, you need to incur cost. So there's a cost in adding another person. And then for public goods, we have something called the free riders. Okay, those people are there. You cannot prevent them from consuming it because it's too expensive to do that. But for a pure private good, you can do that because when you are able to prevent them and you sell it, the price that you get there will be higher than whatever cost that you incurred as you try to prevent those people from free riding. Okay, and then for a pure public good, the utility that one person gets from consuming the good will not fall when we admit another consumer. Okay, when you bring more people to consume the good, it does not reduce the benefit that they get from that good. But it's all like that with pure private goods. Okay, when I'm consuming a good and you come to also consume the same good, it reduces the utility or the satisfaction that I get from that good. Okay, and then also production of the good does not increase the variable cost by adding an extra person. So whatever cost that we incurred in producing the good is the same, even if just a person is using it or two people or as many people as possible. But when you go to private goods, it's not like that. There's a variable cost because if you want to produce more, you have to incur more costs. So if you want to add another person, you have to incur the cost of producing for that person. And then under private goods, we have private property rights. If I buy it, I have my economic right over that good. But for public goods, there's a common property right. So we don't actually have ownership of that good. It's for the entire community. So you can't possess that good. Okay, so these are some of the differences between the pure public good and then the pure private good. All right, let's look at effective provision of public good. But before we look at that, we have to look at how private goods are also provided. Then we'll move to the public goods. So let's start with the partial equilibrium analysis. With this, we are talking about doing the demand and supply analysis of a single good. Remember, we have general equilibrium analysis. That one is talking about the entire economy. So this one, we just take one private good and then we see how that good is produced and how it is priced. So when we're talking about a private good, we are talking about a competitive market. Okay. Now we all know under perfect competition that we only trade a commodity at the point where supply is exactly equal to demand. Okay. So you, the consumer, you try to buy the good where the benefit that you are getting from the good is exactly the same as your cost. Okay. So if the price is the cost that you get, and then your marginal benefit is the utility, the marginal utility that you get from that particular good. So under perfect competition to the consumer, price must be equal to the marginal utility that you get. And then with regards to the firm too, they produce up to the point where their marginal benefit is equal to their marginal cost. So marginal benefit to the firm is the price, okay, and then the marginal cost is the additional cost that's in there. So under perfect competition, that's why we say that price must be equal to the marginal cost before the firm will produce or before the good will be traded. So let's look at this. This is a market for a particular private good. Okay, for private goods, we have firms and consumers being price takers. Okay, they are just price takers, but they adjust their quantity. So let's take these two consumers, consumer A and then consumer B. The price is fixed. I'm sure we all remember that. Under perfect competition, price is constant. So the price is fixed. But we have these two individuals with their own demand curves. So DA is for individual A, DB is for individual B. Okay. Now, at the same price, the individuals can choose to buy whatever quantity that they want. So individual A is buying quantity QA. Individual B is buying quantity QB. So this is the individual demand for consumer A. This is the individual demand for consumer B. But then when you go to the market, you have equilibrium in the market. When the market demand is equal to the market supply curve, okay? So the market demand here is the horizontal summation of the two individual demands. So this is the demand curve for the market, and it's the horizontal summation of DA and then DB. When you add the two demand curves, then you will get that of the market. So at the same price of P, individual A is buying QA, individual B is buying QB. So the market demand here is going to be Q, and that is going to be the sum of QA and then QB. Okay, so at the price of P, the entire market is going to buy quantity Q, because that's the point where supply is exactly equal to what? Demand. So this is what happens in the market for a private good. Okay, this is what happens in the market for a private good. So for the firm, now individual A is faced with price P. Okay, this price over here to individual A is facing a price OP. We can call it OPA just to denote that that's the price that A faces. But because it's a competitive market, individual B is also faced with price OPB. But they are both the same. OP is the same as OPA, is the same as what? OPB, because it's a competitive market. They are all faced with the same price. So OP should be equal to OPA, should be equal to OPB. And remember, it should be equal to what? The marginal cost. But the quantity at that equilibrium point is going to be what? The sum of OQA and OQB. So if you add OQA and OQB, that's where we get our OQ. So this is what happens in the market for a private good, what we already know. Now, okay, let's look at this before we look at the public goods. Now, remember, under consumer theory, our marginal rate of substitution between two goods must be equal to the price ratios. I'm sure we all remember that. If you have two consumers, like the example that we used, if you have consumer A and consumer B, then the market is going to be in equilibrium when the marginal rate of substitution for A is the same as that of B and is the same as the price ratio of the two goods in question. Okay, so here, these are the two goods. I, C, and C are representing the two goods. Now, when we normalize PC, okay, when we assuming we take the price of C to be 1, what this means is that marginal rate of substitution for the two individuals must be equal to the price of whatever first good that they are talking about. Now, when you go to the firm will only produce when marginal cost is equal to price. Okay, when marginal cost is equal to price. So if MRS is equal to price, and then the marginal cost is equal to price, then we only have an equilibrium for a pure private good when the marginal rate of substitution for that individual is equal to the marginal cost that the firm faces when he produces whatever goods that we are talking about. So this is the condition for a private good. These are things that we already know, that the marginal rate of substitution should be equal to the marginal cost of producing those goods. But how do we look at the case of public goods? Now, remember, for a public good, the quantity is fixed. Okay, the quantity of a public good is fixed. We are all enjoying the same quantity. So let's take this quantity Q. This is the quantity that has been produced by either the private sector or the public sector. So the good has been produced. Now, how do we price the pure public good? The prices that the individuals that are enjoying the good pay is just equal to their preferences, the marginal benefit that they get from consuming that good. Now, assuming there's a street light, okay, we want people to pay for this street light. Now, after we have provided for this street light, there's no way we can prevent somebody from consuming it. So how do we price them? We'll price them based on how the individuals value street light. So now let's take these two people. They all have cars. For one person, the light is not working, but for the other person, the light is working. Don't you think that the person whose light is not working will value the street light more than the person whose light is working? So if you have these two individuals, you have to ask them, how do they value the public good that we are thinking of providing? How do they, what are the marginal benefits that they get from consuming the street light? Then based on the value that they put on the good or the marginal benefit that they get from the good, then we use it to price them. So you realize that here, the person whose car light isn't working will be willing to pay more for the same quantity. He'll be willing to pay more than the person whose car's light is working. So if you look at the diagram here, we are all enjoying the same quantities. We still have these two individuals, individual A and individual B. This is the demand curve for A. This is the demand curve for B. Okay. Now we are enjoying this quantity Q. Individual A is willing to pay a price PA for the good, for this quantity Q that he's consuming. So we can say that the PA is the value that he puts on this quantity Q, or this is the marginal benefit that he gets from Q. So this is what he has reviewed. Then for individual B, this is where the demand curve crosses the quantity line. So he will be willing to pay a price PP, a PP. So this is the benefit, the value that he puts on the street light. So when you add the two prices that these people are willing to pay, that will give us the market price for this public good. So assuming this person is paying 10 cedis, this person is paying 50, then it means that we'll be able to use the 25 cedis to provide this public good. So here, the market demand for this good is not the horizontal summation, but rather the vertical summation of the two. We call these demand curves pseudo demand curves. So when you add these prices or these values, you get the market value. So this is how we get a demand curve for this public good. And when it's equal to the supply curve, we get the equilibrium quantity and then the equilibrium price. For pure private goods, we get the market demand by doing horizontal summation. But for pure public goods, we get it by doing vertical summation. So the prices that you see here are the benefits that these two individuals have reviewed. Okay, so we'll charge the person according to the benefits that he gets, or the value that he puts on the good that he or she is consuming. Okay, so this is how we are able to get the partial equilibrium quantity and then price for a public good. Okay. All right, I hope you understand. Okay, so what we need to understand is that because you cannot prevent me from consuming the good, you have to be begging me. Okay, so here we don't force people. We use the principle of willingness to pay. Okay, am I willing to pay? If I am not willing, you can't force me. I even doubt that we want to go to a community where there are no street lights, and then you want to provide them with street lights. You find people who will not be willing to pay anything at all. Okay, so whatever price or value that we put on this public good will be based on our willingness to pay. Okay, now let's look at the difference here. For a private good, we added the two quantities to get the equilibrium quantity, right? But here we add the prices. Okay, so instead of a private good where price is equal to marginal cost, here the price is not equal to the marginal cost, at least not individually. For the private good, OPA was equal to OPP, was equal to OP, and it was equal to the marginal cost. But under public goods, we get the yeah, hello. All right, so I was saying that for a public good, unlike the private good where OP was equal to OPA, equal to OPB is equal to the marginal cost, here we get the marginal benefit by adding the two prices. Okay, so here the value that A puts on the good is given by OPA, and the value that B puts on the good is given by OPB. So when we add the two, then we get what? The market price. So for a private good, we equate marginal benefit to marginal cost. But for a pure public good, the marginal benefit is the summation of the prices that the various individuals are trying to pay or are willing to pay. In other words, we get the marginal benefit, by adding the marginal benefit from the various individuals that are going to enjoy the public good. So if you want to get the equilibrium condition here, we add PA to PB to get OP. Then that is where we get our equilibrium. But if you remember, under the private good, it wasn't like that. We just equated the two prices all to the marginal cost. It was rather quantity that we had to add the two quantities to get our equilibrium quantity or the market quantity. Okay. Right, so for the public good, we have efficiency in its production